Mm.
British royals pursuing an American dream.
Title of his book then should be Trash.
Oh my gosh, I think you're gonna get bashed by Harry's supporters. Hi everyone, welcome to Pro Opinions. I'm Diane,
Hi, I'm Professor Mel.
and today our topic is going to be something pretty interesting for me because I love following the Royals. But we're going to talk about something that's been kind of buzzworthy in the last few weeks, and that is Prince Harry's new book, Spare. And this is his memoir. And this was released in January 10, and I got this very book on release date. It was pretty interesting because I called Books a Million and they told me, well, we can only hold it until the end of the day because it's going pretty fast. So it kind of tells you a little bit about the demand during that first month. But I'm hearing lately that sales haven't been as strong as when it first started. But it is about 416 pages long, and it has the digital and the paperback. So of course I have the hardcover format here. And interestingly, it's been translated into 15 languages too. But the interesting part about the audiobook itself, I don't know if you know this, Pops, but Harry was the one who actually narrated the audiobook.
Oh,
So you can really hear
read the book and at the same time also bought the audiobook.
Yeah.
You'll be really interested in what he has said.
I know. I didn't buy the audiobook. I just heard the audiobook from other sources and on social media and stuff. He talked about some pretty sensitive topics in this book. It's very funny. And so to hear him talk a little bit about how he lost his virginity in the back of a pub or something like that, or
let's go into the details about what makes this book a very interesting read, and what's your take on it, being the expert on royal issues.
Well, let's talk about the history a little bit. I mean, I've been reading about the royal family since I was a child, and I've been following them, and I'm what you call a royal watcher. And in my early career as a journalist, I also wrote about them for a royal website, which was just a startup at that time, but is now a big major news source for royal news. So yes, I've been following them quite a bit, and mostly I really like to see that intersection of media and public relations and that public affairs that they do, and the image that they project to the public. And so what makes, going back to your question then, of what makes this book different or more interesting, is really, there's no other way to say it. I mean, Prince Harry blew the lid off royal life and that mystery surrounding the monarchy. The monarchy is really powered by goodwill. It's about people's goodwill, and really rely on the people believing in their usefulness, in the role that they bring, in their importance. And so a book like this that uncovers some of the deepest, darkest secret, maybe not like that. I mean, I think Harry still kind of, he didn't actually share anything, I think, that would be considered deepest, darkest secret in this book. In fact, a lot of what he did is more commentary about our backstory about some of the stories that we've already read in the newspapers. And and so that tells me that he's also trying to be careful about what he reveals, because he knows that reputation and that public perception is very, very important. It made the War of the Windsors very public. So what
When you
um,
talk about the War of the Windsors, it's between or among who?
mostly his brother and him. And that was the so a couple years ago, or actually ever since Harry and Meghan got married in 2018, there have been a lot of stories that have been coming out about them. And and up until this point of the book, the War of the Windsors, that split that happened, that tension between the two brothers have very much been behind closed doors. And if there are public manifestations, it's whatever the brothers kind of leak about each other, or their friends leak about each other. But now it has coming out, and really this book, he mostly actually attacks the two entities he attacks. Number one, he attacks the media and the role of the media in his life, and the role of the media in his family. The second thing is that he talks about how he shatters this myth that we all have as royal watchers, that him and his brother are close. I mean, up to this point, we thought they are best friends. You know, they're as close as brothers can be. But Harry in this book actually claims that there is no further from the truth. In
So
fact,
before you move on, let me ask you about the title of the book. Why do you think it was titled Spare?
well, he discusses that at length. In fact, that is the theme of the whole book, because all throughout, the theme that is threaded is he illustrates how he is the spare, or is only a spare. And in fact, from an emotional standpoint, I actually felt sorry for him reading some of the passages. He was talking about how he got the smaller room, compared to Williams. William got the better bathroom. William got preferential treatment for a lot of things because he is the heir. And William, for example, would always be first to know certain things. Um, you know,
So
he
so really that title of being a spare or despair is an emotional metaphor for how he felt about himself, correct?
oh, absolutely. And you have to know, like, because the notion of the heir and the spare, right? Heir and the spare, it dates back to other royal lineages. There's always been
Yeah.
here the heir and the spare that could take over from if something happens to the heir, right? And that was more important in the in royal history, not so much in modern royals. But in the past, the spare is very, very important for you to have someone else who could take over if something happens to the heir to the throne. Now,
But here's the question I have. Isn't he a little bit misperceiving his place in the family? He's not even a spare. He's not in the line of succession. He is not, he is like remotely in the line of succession as far as being an heir is concerned. So he was actually he's giving the wrong perception maybe about himself and to the public, that I deserve something more. But he doesn't. He is not in the line of succession to begin with.
He is in the line of succession currently, but he is no longer the spare, because the meaning he's no longer as close to the line of succession as when he was born. So when he was born, he was third in line to the throne. Okay. Now with his brother having 3 children, he is now so George is now, well, they've moved up already. So George is second in line, Charlotte, and then Louis, and then Harry. So he's no longer, yes, technically you're right, he's no longer the spare, but ever since he was born, they have been depicted as the heir and the spare, and it's something that the media used a lot to refer to the 2 brothers. And one of the revelations in this book is how the Queen and Charles and their own mother Diana also use the term spare, or also just regarded him as the spare, which I think hurt him deeply, because he didn't feel that they were valuing him as a person himself. They were treating him as if really he's a second-class citizen or just the spare.
Okay.
That is how he depicts it in the book.
Yeah.
Which,
but I think his misgiving or his emotionality about the issue is also misplaced, because he feels that he should be entitled to become the next king, but he's not. And that's I think is something that he brought upon himself.
Well, I'm not sure that he thinks he's entitled to be the next king. I think he thinks he's entitled to at least be treated equally, which, that was already a losing proposition, given that this is an institution that that values order and hierarchy.
But shouldn't that be a liberating status for him? Just because he doesn't have to be squeaky clean before the public, and he doesn't have to have that so-called responsibility of carrying the throne. But I think it's his personal ambition that's giving him his grief, rather than the actuality of the persecution that he probably thinks people are aiming at him. I don't know. You are the royal expert here.
But and that's true too. And there could be some jealousy there too, to be honest. I mean, there's your typical sibling rivalry, where the younger person feels intimidated by their older brother or older sister, and it sounds like a typical family to me too. But it's just this whole book is ghost written, by the way, by a really good writer, J.R. Moringer, which was awesome. Made it for a really good read, actually. But there you can hear a hint of sarcasm in his tone when he was saying that Willie, he calls Willie, his brother Willie in this book, asked him to pretend not to know him when they were at boarding school, for example. Or when he describes the scuffle, this fight that they had, where Willie pushed him and that he actually got injured in the back because he fell on a dog bowl. And they had a fight.
Is he attacking the royal press, or he's attacking the press relations office of the palace?
I think he's attacking both. And I think that I think he's attacking the press of the palace because the press relations, the public relations of the palace, because of their, I guess, again, they are giving preferential treatment to the more senior royals, and as 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 lesser royals, they can't defend themselves or they can't tell their side of the story, because the palace's stance is not to comment on these things. He, like I said, committed something that is unthinkable for the royals, which is the tell all book. Um, this is something that is I'm sure, a huge disappointment for his family, because they've always valued their privacy. And again, public image is very, very important to them. And for someone from their own family to do this is something that is, I'm sure, um, they never, ever, ever expected to happen.
After this, what do you think is the idea here? Did Harry win by coming out with this book? Is he a winner or a loser
Um,
in this in this book?
um, well, I think from an emotional internal standpoint, maybe initially he could feel like a winner because he was able to um, relieve himself of all those emotions and things that he wanna say. But from a public perception, I'm not sure that he is a winner at all. I I think that it made him look like he's whining. Um, and he is just wanting to make money out of book sales. I think the bottom line public perception is that. He just fueled the very thing that I think he was trying to attack on this book, which is sensationalism. And that, because he did release some pretty interesting, juicy details on this book too, um, um, and quite a lot of them. I will say though, he did bridge the gap on some of the knowledge that interested individuals like me don't have. Um, so that made it interesting for us to follow the royal family. But as far as whether it did something to his brand, um, I think they really need to reflect on the impact of this book on their brand. I mean, financially, of course, he made money out of it. And if that's his goal, then sure, that's mission accomplished. But from a long term standpoint of his brand, I think he's trying to portray himself as the savior of the monarchy. That I am trying to right what is wrong with some of these practices in the institution, and that's fine. But are people perceiving him as a whiner, and are they perceiving him with everything negative associated with royals? Spoiled brats and entitled people? Um, maybe, honestly, from a reputation standpoint. Um, I think, um, putting again my communication PR hat on here now, um, Harry and Meghan are having a reputation or an identity crisis in terms of their public identity, their public reputation, because they relocated, they quit, um, working, being they quit the royal family, or I'm sorry, you can't quit the royal family. You're still part of the royal family. You were born into the royal family, but they stop working full time as royals, which means doing duties for the state, which means doing duties for charity, which means being a good role model to people and bringing inspiration and hope to people, ambassadors of Britain. That's what they're supposed to be. They quit all that when they decided to leave royal life and relocated to California in the United States. But when they relocated, then what are they now? What has become of them? I think they tried to maintain that idea that they're charity workers, that they're still going to do charity and they have their foundation and championing this and championing that. The issue is that we don't have that kind of model of royalty in the United States. And so I am not sure that their idea or branding idea of being the charity people um, alone is resonating to the public. So right now, I think people don't even know how to describe them.
From your professional standpoint, who is winning the PR war on this one?
I think it's William, because I think William is playing the long game. Again, because he is not responding to the petty attacks. He is trying to rise above all of them. William and Kate in particular, her public image is pristine. In the minds of the public, she's like the future of the monarchy. William, sure, he is the future king, but his reputation kind of got some dings, some dents from his brother. But because he's just continuing on what he's doing, he's focusing on his charity work. He is day in, day out, just doing what he has to do or doing his job. I think in the long run, that is going to make the difference in his public perception. With Harry, I'm not sure what his long game is. That's what I was trying to get at earlier, where what is this actually doing to your brand? Is it actually helping your brand? Because right now, I'm not sure that it does. And that's the only thing I can think of if I'm gonna scrape on without asking Harry point blank, what exactly is your long game? The only thing I can think of, he is trying to keep his significance by doing this, by making noise, by making sure his name is out there, his name is grabbing headlines through all of this. Maybe because the worst thing, I guess I should say this, it's not necessarily the worst thing for him to be perceived in a negative light. So maybe that's not his goal. The worst thing for him is to be forgotten. The worst thing for him is for people not to care or not remember his name anymore. Because again, it goes back to what kind of job can you get as an ex-prince? Right?
Become a consultant for like Game of Thrones.
Or Netflix, because or The Crown. So I mean, that could be the end game. It could be as simple as he is trying to provide for his family, and that he's using whatever it is he's got in order to do that.
You get a sense that he's gonna write some more of these things.
Oh, yes, he already we already know he is writing more books. So
Well, aside from its gossip factor, uh, what can you think as a contribution or value of this book for ordinary readers? Does it give you any life lessons that you should take away from this book? Is there like something that, you know, is like a redeeming value for what he wrote,
I
or
think
just like a sizzler for everybody to consume?
for the most part it's that, but if I were to take away some things from it, I do think one of the accomplishments he did have is to expose some of the flaws of the system of the monarchy and its reliance on hierarchy, and that those on the lower rungs of the ladder are not as important as those on the higher, and that there is no one and nothing more important than the crown. Whether or not some people think that's fine, some people have dedicated their entire lives to that very idea of that there is nothing more important than the crown. But then there are some people who think, is that right? Is that fair?
Hmm.
Does that even belong in the 21st century? And I think he exposed some of the flaws of the system, not only in the institution of the monarchy itself and the disparities that exist within it, but also the institution of the press and the bias that they could have, the bias that they do have, because again it's ran by people also. And so he talks a lot about the press and the how, you know, the attention from that made his life miserable. um he's just never been able to recover from all of that, and the impact of that misery on him and his family. um he exposes, he, I guess, from, if it is a contribution, it's a contribution to that thought, to that idea that these institutions are not perfect, they are flawed, and that and their flaws have real impact on people's lives, and his life, how his life in particular has been impacted by that.
Hmm.
um
Interesting.
but I mean, I one of the questions that I think we want to know is, how does this what does this mean for the image of the British monarchy, and in the long run? Again, exposing some of these flaws, really exposing the fact that they are humans, right? I mean, we knew that, but again, we hold them to a higher standard. We have these preconceived notions about the way royals should be, but his depictions challenges all of that. And the other thing I think I could take away from this that is pretty important is this whole idea that things are not always as they seem. And you could perceive something in a certain way, and it could totally be different. And I go back to, I was really
So
saddened and mind blown by the fact that Harry and William, for all the stuff they've gone through, are actually not close
yeah.
brothers. In fact, they could, by the way Harry described their relationship, they might as well be strangers.
Okay. I have a very, very important question to ask you. It's you seem to suggest that he thinks that royalty has no place in a modern society, or that did he not like it because he did not gain advantage he was in, that because he decided to get out, right,
Mm-hmm,
from the royal family,
mm-hmm,
and to, for what reason, I'm not sure yet. And for, I believe sometimes he gives the reason that it's for the benefit of my wife and for
mm-hmm,
the sanity of my family and
mm-hmm.
the children's sake. But if you're saying that he thinks that there are so many things bad about the royalty, then is why doesn't he send the message to the British, or to the all the royalties in the world, that there's really no place for royalty in the modern world? Or you think he's not yet that big enough to challenge a cultural um, heritage, or something like as big as destroying monarchy or
You
slaying the dragon, so to speak?
he could be setting the stage up for that. The 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 trouble with that is he himself is royal, and right now he's deriving all of his influence, all that he is around the fact that he's a prince, he was born royal. And so to do that is to attack the very thing that he is. But yes, he does criticize the institution, and but I'm not sure that he um, has gone so far to the extent of saying it has no place in the world. Um, but I do think it's the latter that you said, which is more because he got the short end of the stick, he's the spare, and he's
Yeah.
not benefiting from it. Then he could, the flaws of the institution is really amplified in him. um and and he could very well, I mean, it's a tough spot to be in because again, you were raised to think you have to be one thing. You are a prince, you are waiting in the wings in case you're needed because you're the spare. How do you plan your life around that, you
So
know?
his his gripes about the monarchy is not really based on the universal principle that this is wrong in society, but that he wasn't benefiting from this very system that he thinks he should benefit from.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's the first one yet. I have not seen any evidence of that he wants to overthrow the monarchy or anything like that. I was very surprised though at the indifference that he had toward the monarchy and the institution of the monarchy. So he could very well be leading down that path. He just haven't he just really hasn't gone there, which I think is probably because, it means he's going nuclear on them.
Mm.
And his father is gonna get crowned. There's a coronation happening in May. And this is, see, that's the thing. The timing of this whole thing is very significant too, because Charles is not as popular a monarch as his mother. Um, he's not as well liked even in Britain. So to have this come out, it makes you really think, okay, what does this mean for the Royal British monarchy and the image of the British monarchy at this point in time? Um, and I want to know from our audience members, um, what they think this means for the image of the British monarchy in the long term. Do you think that Harry is coming out and saying there's no place for the royal family? Or do you think it's just the latter, which is, he's griping because he didn't benefit from the system?
I think he's griping. I think he feels that he contributed much to the prestige of the royalty by, him being a volunteer for the army, laying down his life in service of his country, right? By being an Afghan veteran. He also feels like he has a tremendous contribution of putting the royalty in the front pages because of his Invictus Games and his charitable work. And that I feel there is a personal ambition that cannot happen, and he knows it, right? By being in the royalty, regardless of, what he does. So if you can compare it to a woman's position in society, that's also his glass ceiling. That regardless of how much achievements he has, how great he is, how wonderful he is, he will always be a second-class citizen, as you said, in his own family. But at the same time, it's really this pride and ambition that's going to bring you down, and I think that's where Harry is mistaken in his approach. What he should have done, I think, is to stay in the royalty and institutionalize some of those changes that he thinks are necessary, or reform that are necessary to make the hierarchy more relevant, more responsive to society. And now that he isolated himself and tries to burn down the house, it did not serve his purpose. If he was thinking of himself only as a spare before he left the royalty, he is now a garbage in the royalty's perspective on him. They're not even thinking about giving him a seat on the table.
Yeah.
So and I think that's a major blunder for whatever strategy he might have, or the long game, as you said, he has in his head.
Right.
He wants to reform the system. By how, I don't know. I haven't read the book, so. But at the same time, it's very hard to reform a system when you are out of it.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. Because also, at the crux of the matter too is that sibling rivalry between the two of them, where
Yes.
he probably felt like nobody's listening to him, that his brother is very, he's already said that in the book, dismissive, and that he doesn't care about him, he doesn't, he's mad at him, whatever the case might be. And so
the title of his book then should be Trash.
Oh my gosh, I think you're gonna get bashed by Harry's supporters.
Because he goes from spare, now that he's out of the royalty, he's no longer a spare, he's a trash. Right?
Yeah, he must have thought, it just takes a little bit of arrogance to do that, like you think you can get out and command attention like that, and burn down the house on your way out. Well, this is an institution that has lasted 1,000 years. It's not that simple. um, Again, there are some things that need to be corrected with that institution. It has to evolve um, with the times. But yes, I think some of the people who have been able to change it in the past, and that could be a topic for another blog, um, stayed inside the institution. So, um,
I think
and
the title of this blog should be From Spare to Trash.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna watch the comments for that. If you all agree about that new title.
Okay.
So don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hi, this is Professor Mel.
And I'm Diane Powell, and thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you
Bye.
next week. Bye.